CBS 7 News presents Closer Look.
Welcome to Closer Look. I'm Macey Meriggi. Risk and reward is a concept that you often hear when thinking about investing. It's a story you saw first here on CBS 7 News at 6 p.m. yesterday. One company is using the trends of oil and gas prices to offer investment opportunities. First, we'll show you Sarah Strackhouse's report. Then we'll take a closer look.
Take a look at this pump jack. It looks pretty ordinary to the normal person, but what could be different about this one is exactly how it's paid for.
Drilling a rig costs millions. With oil prices down, many companies are looking into funding, crowdfunding.
The equity crowdfunding exemption that was passed by the state of Texas that allows you to take equity back from a crowdfunding opportunity.
Anyone can invest online through companies such as crude funders to essentially own shares of a well or other operations.
So if the product is successful, then you're allowed to actually take that equity and you'll start seeing liquidity in the first 6 months.
But drilling doesn't always go the way you expect.
Now, on the off chance that it did not actually produce results, it's an excellent tax write-off.
Crowdfunding expert David Taylor says there is risk, though, depending on what project you're investing in. A thought financial expert Mickey Cargile stresses.
Certainly, when an oil and gas investment works out, it can create great wealth. But you have to be, again, very careful as an individual because you don't understand the total risk. The risk can go far beyond your initial investment.
He says those who may not understand oil and gas always have the option of the stock market.
Either invest in mutual funds or directly into corporations that are involved in oil and gas drilling. That way they can spread their risk out. While the return may not be as great as it would be if a well hits, the risk is much less and much more identifiable.
A major piece of advice that both Cargile and Taylor say is to do your research. With your eye on energy, Sarah Strackhouse, CBS 7 News.
Joining me now in the studio is David Taylor. David, thanks for being here.
My pleasure. How are you?
Great. So David, first of all, how do you make it possible for the average American to become an oil baron in their own right?
Well, crowdfunding is kind of a project that's been around for about the last 7 years, and it allows anyone that has a pet project or something that they find amazing to be able to put some sort of a capital in time or a dollar into an investment. Now, typically it's rewards based. And Texas has just passed a law that allows people to actually take equity into certain companies that are Texas-based and if they're Texas residents.
Well, okay, so typically you'll see things like, I think of the coolest cooler, was one crowdsourcing new fun gadget that people were really hyped up about. But how do you make oil a crowdfunding opportunity?
Oil is actually a perfect opportunity for this because it's one of the few investments that you can make that actually has consistent returns. So think of it as a monthly return on your capital. So if the oil well produces, then you're going to see returns for probably the next 10 to 15 years.
Wow. Now, why are companies looking for more money to put into wells?
So our sweet spot, or at crudefunders.com, the sweet spot is really the independent drillers. And a lot of these people have great projects that have been waiting on the shelf for a while, or it's something that was a family land and they needed to have that capital. So we try to find exceptional drillers and find the right projects with the right sciences behind it, and that capital is crucial for them.
Okay. Now, our financial expert, Mickey Cargile, says this type of investing is not for the average man. You have to have a lot of knowledge about the industry before making a decision to invest. So do you agree with that statement?
I absolutely agree with that, but it's not necessarily not for the average person, because we bring in an expert group of geophysicists. There's an organization that kind of vets and pre-vets a lot of these industry deals, and so then they are pre-vetted to go onto the website. So at crudefunders.com, it's going to be a much higher likelihood of a project that makes sense for people.
Okay. Now, of course, the thought on many people's minds right now is the downturn in oil prices, and opinions are mixed on if now is the right time to invest in oil or not. So how has that downturn affected the amount of people wanting to become a part of crude funding?
Well, investing in oil has been a consistent pattern for the last 100 years. But what we think is there's never a bad time to invest in oil. There's just bad strategies. So what we try to do in vetting some of these projects that go on to crudefunders.com is we try to make sure that these projects have a higher likelihood of a long-term residual, and so they're not going to be the ones that have a 2-year where let's just say it's a fracking position where in 2 years that's when most of the reserves are taken out of the ground. What we try to do is make them a long-term play, so it might be a 10 or 15-year play and let the dollar amount of the oil barrel go up.
Okay, now sticking with the risk factor involved, our expert Mickey Cargile says that it's very difficult to really make money off ventures like this. So why should we consider an investment of this type?
If let's just say the well produces properly, it's one of the industries that have a higher yield. So instead of investing $1,000 into a stock market that might have a 12% return if you're extremely lucky, oil has the potential to be a lot higher, and it also is a little bit more consistent, and it's a little more liquid as well.
Okay, well, like we said, this might not be for everyone, but for the people who would like to consider this type of investment, where can they go for some more information? So
the portal is actually called crudefunders.com. It is a crowdfunding portal that's based on the interstate exemption, and so it's a Texas-approved, State Securities Board-approved portal, and that's all you'd have to do is go there and look around and make sure it's the right project and the right fit for you when you invest.
All right, David, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.